Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're embarking on a journey into, well, a kind of quiet revolution that's happening in modern criminal justice.
It really is.
We're talking about how these massive, highly organized criminal networks, the ones that, believe they are operating in total secrecy, are being brought down.
And not by the usual things, not by human spies or long, complex wiretaps.
Exactly. It's by a single, often pretty innocuous piece of technology.
We've been calling this the silent alarm. It's that one definitive digital witness that just flips an entire investigation on its head.
Let's say how exactly.
Well, it's the instant an investigation moves past all the messy stuff, suspicion, rumor, unreliable human informants, and goes straight to concrete, time-stamped, legally admissible evidence.
Right. And you've given us sources that detail these incredible cases, everything from global sting operations to really specific, localized anti-corruption probes.
They're all connected by this one theme.
And our mission today is to really get into the full story in these cases. We want to understand the exact moment that the technology, whether it's an app, a hidden camera, or just a simple tracker, was deployed.
And not just deployed, but intentionally deployed to suddenly expose the entire architecture of a crime.
Yeah, so we're going to have to dive deep into the technical side, the legal justifications, and of course, the profound results.
The irony in all of these cases is just, it's palpable.
How so?
Well, you have criminals investing heavily in high-tech solutions specifically for guaranteed secrecy.
Right, they think they're buying privacy.
They think they're buying invincibility, only to find that law enforcement, or in some cases determined journalists, had weaponized an even higher level of tech sophistication against them.
That's like a digital confession.
It is. It's the moment where silence becomes the loudest evidence possible.
So let's start with the big one, the one that I think really rewrote the playbook for global law enforcement collaboration.
It has to be Operation Trojan Shield.
Or, as it's better known by its legendary product name, AN0M.
This operation, it's the textbook example of proactive infiltration. This wasn't law enforcement chasing criminals.
Right.
This was law enforcement creating the environment, the entire digital ecosystem, where the most sophisticated transnational organized crime figures would willingly, even enthusiastically congregate.
All for the purpose of capturing every single word they said.
Every word.
So before AN0M, we know the organized crime world was kind of reeling. These other high-profile encrypted platforms like Sky ECC and EncroChat had just been shut down.
Right. There was a vacuum in the market, a huge one.
So AN0M arrives into a market that's just hungry for a secure replacement. How on earth did law enforcement build the trust needed to get these major syndicates to just migrate over to a system that they themselves had created?
Trust was everything. It was paramount. And it was engineered with just absolute precision.
Engineered how?
First, they learned from the failures of their competitors. The FBI, which really spearheaded this with international partners, they made sure the AN0M branded devices were not commercially available at all.
So you couldn't just go online and buy one?
No way. They were sold exclusively on the black market.
Which is brilliant. So the scarcity and the difficulty of even getting a device actually boosted its credibility.
It boosted its street cred, exactly.
Yeah.
They used what's called a trusted vendor approach.
Okay. What does that mean?
It means they use high-level informants and, known criminal associates as the distributors. These were the people vouching for the platform's security and its exclusivity.
And I'm guessing it wasn't cheap.
Not at all. The price point was steep. We're talking often between $1,500 and $2,000 per device.
Wow.
And that's before the subscription fee. That high cost, it falsely signaled this idea of exclusivity and unbreakable security. It made the product appealing only to people involved in serious, high-stakes crime.
Okay, let's talk about the tech itself. The hardware and software. We often hear the devices were rigged. This wasn't just some simple backdoor, was it? They basically built a dedicated surveillance tool and disguised it as a secure phone.
That's precisely what they did. And the technical nuance here is just key. The phones themselves were often just standard, but heavily stripped down Android devices.
Stripped down how?
Crucially, they disabled or completely removed common functions. The camera, the microphone, the GPS, all gone.
Which to a criminal sounds great.
It sounds perfect.
Right.
Because organized crime figures, they live in fear of being remotely monitored through those features. So removing them enhanced this illusion of total security. Then the AN0M software was installed on top of that neutered device.
So how did that software function as the silent alarm? How was the message intercepted without the user ever realizing their encryption was, completely compromised?
The trick was all in the routing and the timing. It was elegant. When a user composed a message on the AN0M app, the software was specifically configured to capture a plain text copy of that message.
Before it was encrypted.
Exactly. Before it underwent the genuine end-to-end encryption process that the user believed was protecting it. This captured plain text copy was then, well, it was stealthily rerouted.
Where did it go? And how did they hide that traffic? I mean, surely someone would notice a data leak.
It was directed to a server controlled by law enforcement, and the data itself was disguised as just innocuous metadata traffic. The kind of digital noise that's always happening. It was often hidden within standard communication protocols.
So let me get this straight. The user's message did get encrypted and sent to the recipient?
It did. The recipient got the message, they believed it was secure, the entire ecosystem functioned perfectly from their perspective.
But all the while, a perfect copy had already been silently siphoned off to the FBI servers.
The silent alarm collected everything.
That is just profound in its deception. It means law enforcement agencies were running this parallel ghost network that copied every single communication planning a crime for years.
For years.
How many communications are we even talking about here? What was the scale?
Millions. Just try to wrap your head around this. Over 20 million messages were captured and analyzed.
20 million?
Involving tens of thousands of users across more than 100 countries. This wasn't reactive surveillance. This was a constant real-time intelligence feed detailing global drug trafficking, money laundering, and critically planned acts of violence.
And that violence part, that's often cited as the ethical justification for such a massive long-term intrusion, right?
It is, and for good reason. What kind of critical actions did this real-time intelligence actually allow law enforcement to take?
That's where the sheer scope really proves its value. The data allowed authorities to intervene instantly.
For example?
The sources we have confirm that Operation Trojan Shield prevented over 50 planned killings globally.
50?
50. Imagine reading a message that details exactly where and when an assassination is supposed to take place. The law enforcement response just shifts entirely. It moves from investigation to immediate life-saving intervention.
All based on that one piece of digital evidence.
So beyond saving lives, what was the scale of the eventual takedown when they finally pulled the plug?
The takedowns were synchronized across the globe. It was dubbed Operation Ironside in Australia, but it was executed simultaneously across Europe and the US. And the results were just immediate and massive. Over 800 arrests globally in just the initial phases.
What about the tangible assets? The money, the drugs? That must speak to the sheer financial scale of the networks they'd gotten inside.
Seizures were historic. We're talking tons, literal tons of illicit narcotics. Cocaine, methamphetamine, heroin, often estimated at several $100 million in street value.
Hundreds of millions.
But it wasn't just drugs. Authorities seized vast amounts of wealth, over $148 million in cash and cryptocurrencies, alongside hundreds of firearms, including high-powered military-grade weapons, and, the usual things. Hundreds of expensive vehicles, luxury assets. The intelligence from AN0M let them dismantle the command structure, seize the assets, and prevent future crimes all at once.
What's so fascinating here is that the success relied entirely on the meticulous analysis of all this captured data. It turned a communication tool into a perfect, self-incriminating record.
Exactly. The silent alarm was just running constantly, giving law enforcement a blueprint of the entire organization.
Yeah.
But I think to frame AN0M properly, you have to understand that the moment of the silent alarm wasn't just one message.
Right.
It was the accumulation of years of unchallenged communication. It created this undeniable narrative of criminal intent, which is so crucial for the legal arguments that always follow these operations.
And we will definitely come back to those legal arguments, but for now, let's shift gears. Because while Operation Trojan Shield proved that a law enforcement agency can build an entire digital city just to lure in global criminals,
sometimes the simplest, cheapest technology, deployed locally, is more than enough to capture a crime in progress.
from infiltrating the global digital code
To just hiding a camera and a tracker in a physical dockyard. Which brings us to our second section, camera and tracker sealing cases with visual proof.
Yeah, this section looks at these really specific, localized stings where undeniable visual proof just sealed the deal. Let's start with a Port Botany jock raid in Australia. This is a brilliant example of using substitution and a kind of dual technological surveillance.
The setup here is almost like something out of a movie. Law enforcement gets intelligence about a major shipment of narcotics arriving at the port.
Okay.
But instead of just conducting a standard bust, they decide to wait. They seize the shipment, let's say it was 500 kilograms of cocaine, and then they execute what's called a substitution tactic.
They swap the real drugs for some kind of inert materials, so the criminals still think their product is on its way.
Yes, but they do more than that. They transform that inert material into a technological tripwire.
The tripwire.
They deployed two critical pieces of silent alarm technology. First, secret cameras. We're talking small, high-resolution devices placed strategically to cover the area where they expected the retrieval to happen. That gives you the visual evidence.
And the second piece of tech, this is the really clever, low-cost application of consumer technology that I found fascinating.
The second was using tracking devices embedded directly within that substituted shipment, and specifically, they used AirTags.
AirTags, the kind you put on your keys.
The very same. It's a perfect modern pivot in physical surveillance.
But wait a second, isn't using common consumer tech like an AirTag inherently less reliable than, say, military-grade GPS? How does that work in a high-stakes investigation like this?
That's actually the brilliance of it. A dedicated GPS tracker, it might require complex wiring, frequent battery changes. An AirTag, on the other hand, leverages the massive civilian network of Apple devices.
So other people's iPhones.
Exactly. iPhones, iPads, Macs. It pings off of any nearby Apple device to triangulate its position. So it gives you accurate location updates without needing its own costly cellular or satellite connection.
And the battery life is incredible.
Exceptional. So for law enforcement, this means low cost, high discretion, and a huge coverage map. It makes it ideal for tracking movement over short distances or in enclosed spaces like a warehouse.
So they had the package location tracked by a network of, unwitting citizens' iPhones, and they had cameras waiting. What happened at the moment of capture?
The silent alarm basically sounded the moment the criminals, following this substituted package, moved in for the retrieval.
Okay.
The tracking device confirmed the exact location and the movement path, which allowed the surveillance teams to be positioned perfectly. But the critical evidence, the thing that really mattered, came from the cameras.
The visual proof.
The visual proof. They captured the individuals, their faces, their clothing, their vehicles, physically interacting with, handling, and attempting to move the substituted material.
And that visual proof, that CCTV evidence, is what separates suspicion from a solid conviction.
Absolutely. A defense attorney can argue their client was just, standing near the shipment.
Right. Wrong place, wrong time.
Exactly. But when you have high-definition video showing them unlocking the container, physically touching the substituted packages, and loading them into their vehicle, well, the case becomes sealed. The silent alarm here was that synchronized trigger, the tracker confirming location, and the camera providing irrefutable visual identification.
And we see this exact same principle. The camera as this silent, irrefutable witness applied in investigative journalism to root out corruption.
They do.
Let's look at the case involving the attempted bribery of an investigative reporter from the Daily Maverick, which was related to the IDT probe.
This moves us from physical crime to political accountability. And investigative reporters, they often delve into deep corruption, putting their word against the word of incredibly powerful individuals, ministers, politically connected business people.
And the only way to shift that balance is with irrefutable primary source evidence.
You have to have the receipts, so to speak. And in this case, the journalists has basically turned the tables by bringing their own silent alarm to the meeting.
What did they do?
The sources detail how the reporters used strategically placed hidden cameras during a really critical meeting. They were being pressured to stop their corruption investigation into an organization called the Independent Development Trust, or IDT.
And the camera just ran silently through the whole exchange.
A whole thing.
And the capture moment, what was the trigger?
The trigger was the explicit verbal offer of a bribe. The entire attempt to offer the reporters 60,000 Rand to drop the probe was documented, visually and audibly.
So the camera captured the environment, the participants,
and the explicit financial transaction offer. Everything.
That level of specificity, the amount, the purpose, and the faces all documented on video is just immediately devastating to any attempted denial.
It creates instant, undeniable accountability. The release of that video, it didn't require a lengthy criminal investigation to confirm the facts. The The evidence was presented directly to the public.
And the cascade effects must have been immediate?
Oh, they were. Criminal complaints were filed, swift official investigations were launched, and there was major public and political fallout for the individuals who were implicated. It is the ultimate example of a camera acting as a tripwire, ensuring that misconduct can't just be dismissed as hearsay.
Shifting now to a far more serious application, the silent alarm plays a really critical, albeit heartbreaking, role in rescuing victims of human trafficking.
Yet this context is much darker because the technology we're talking about here, hidden cameras, is often used by the criminals themselves.
Right. They use it to exploit and monitor their victims inside temporary locations like motel or hotel rooms.
It's a tool for control and intimidation.
So the technology is initially used for criminal ends, but then through a law enforcement raid or a search warrant, it flips and becomes evidence against the criminals.
Exactly. When authorities execute a raid on one of these locations, these devices are often seized. The content recorded by the cameras then becomes absolutely crucial evidence. The recordings capture undeniable activities, often with specific victims, perpetrators, and clear timestamps.
How does that specific visual evidence help law enforcement compared to, say, victim testimony alone, which can be very difficult to secure?
It helps in two crucial ways. First, it can identify unknown victims. The footage might reveal individuals who have since been moved, allowing authorities to track them down, offer rescue, and provide support.
And the second way?
Second, for prosecution, the evidence captured by these cameras can detail the entire hierarchy and the methods of the trafficking ring. Who was in charge, who profited, the extent of the exploitation. It turns the criminal's own surveillance system into a powerful tool for building successful cases and achieving justice.
That just underscores a key point here. Regardless of the context, a global cyber sting, a dock raid, or a trafficking bust, the success of the silent alarm is entirely contingent on perfect procedure.
It has to be. The difference between a great piece of intelligence and a conviction is procedure. We really need to look under the hood at exactly how a device turns raw data into evidence that can survive the intense scrutiny of courtroom.
Which brings us to Section 3. The anatomy of the silent alarm, the mechanics of exposure.
This is the blueprint.
Yeah, this is the blueprint for our listener. What are the 5 structural phases required for this technological intelligence to become actionable? Let's start with phase 1, seeding or placement.
This phase is all about the origin of the surveillance device. And as we've seen, the origin can vary dramatically.
Right.
With A0M, it was intentional. It was law enforcement planting an entire infiltration app ecosystem. In the bribery case, it was a journalist planting a recording device.
And in trafficking cases, it was the criminal installing the camera, which was only discovered later.
Exactly. So the device itself is really a diverse concept.
It's not just one type of technology.
Absolutely not. It could be a camera, a tracker, an app, or even an innocuous sensor. The goal of seeding is to establish that covert mechanism inside the target network or environment. And the placement is often the riskiest human element of the whole operation, making sure the device stays undetected until the capture is complete.
Okay, so that's phase 1. Phase 2 is data capture. The device is running. What defines the success of this phase?
Success here is defined by the quality and the context of the data you're recording. We're talking about audio, video, metadata, messages.
And the type of data dictates how useful it is.
For sure. A high-resolution video of a bribe offer is inherently more definitive than, say, a basic GPS tracker signal, which would require a ton of corroboration. Investigators have to define not just what is captured, but all the ambient context timestamps, locational data, the duration of the recording.
And that attention to detail is so critical because it leads us to the single most important phase for legal admissibility. This is the make-or-break moment for all that effort.
Phase 3, chain of custody and verification.
Talk us through this.
This is the operational and forensic backbone of the entire case. If this phase fails, the whole thing just collapses. It's what defense attorneys attack first, because with digital evidence, the defense can always argue that the evidence was manufactured or manipulated or altered somehow.
So tell us specifically about the technical requirements here.
Yeah.
What separates handling digital evidence from handling, say, a physical firearm?
The difference is profound. With a physical object, you document who touched it, when and where it was stored in a bag. With digital evidence, a hard drive, a seized phone, a server log, you have to be able to prove that the content is exactly the same as it was the moment you seized it.
And that requires some pretty rigorous forensic techniques.
It does. It starts with creating a perfect bit-for-bit image of the seized device or data. perfect clone.
And how do they prove that that perfect image hasn't been tampered with?
Through cryptographic hashing. A hash is think of it as a unique mathematical fingerprint that's assigned to that block of data.
Okay.
If you change a single bit, a comma, a space, even a single letter in the original file, the hash value changes completely. So forensics teams have to generate and log this hash immediately upon seizure, and then again every single time the data is accessed or transferred.
So when they bring the evidence to court, let's say it's the server containing the AN0M messages, they present that hash value. And if the defense can't reproduce that exact hash from the original authenticated copy, then the integrity is proven.
Exactly. This digital fingerprint validation is the only robust defense against the claim that evidence was manufactured or selectively edited. And beyond that, the chain of custody requires detailed logs showing who controlled the device from deployment, how it captured the data, and how the digital copies were stored, protected, and corroborated with external validation.
Like matching the recorded timestamp of a transaction with bank records or other CCTV footage.
All of it. Without that meticulous process, which for AN0s meant handling millions of hashes across dozens of jurisdictions, the intelligence, no matter how compelling it is, remains legally worthless.
It's the ultimate lesson in procedural humility, I guess.
It is. The technological power of the silent alarm is completely wasted if the paperwork and the forensics are messy.
Okay, that brings us to phase 4, the reveal, the silent alarm moment itself. This is the narrative pivot.
This is the flashpoint. It's that single piece of evidence, the specific intercepted AN0M message planning a drug handover, the visual confirmation of the bribe money changing hands.
Or the tracker signal stopping at the exact time the camera starts recording the port botany retrieval.
Yes, that's the moment that converts general suspicion into undeniably actionable intelligence. And this moment often triggers the final phase.
Phase 5, the cascade effects. The ripple effect starts immediately after that evidence is verified.
And the response is swift and wide-ranging. Immediate arrests are made based on the strength of that visual or digital evidence. Financial probes are launched, leading to asset seizures. Forensics teams start follow-up work on related devices.
And often, as we saw with the Daily Maverick case, media coverage and public accountability demands trigger official institutional probes that go far beyond the initial crime that was exposed.
The ripples just keep spreading.
That detailed anatomy gives us a really powerful structural understanding. But every single operation on this scale, especially something like AM0M, immediately raises these profound legal and ethical questions that we have to address.
That is the necessary counterbalance. We've explored the power of covert tech, but now we have to shift to Section 4. The critical implications, all the legal and ethical issues. This power has to be constantly restrained by legal frameworks.
Let's start with the cornerstone debate that just shadows every operation where law enforcement actively inserts itself into the criminal environment. Entrapment versus a lawful sting.
And that line is razor thin, especially with sophisticated operations like AN0M.
So define the difference for us.
Entrapment, essentially, means that law enforcement induced or coerced an individual into committing a crime they were not already predisposed to commit. A lawful sting, on the other hand, is merely providing the opportunity for a crime that the individual already intended to commit.
So how did the AN0M operation manage to stay on the side of a lawful sting, given that they literally created the tool for communication?
The defense against an entrapment claim rests heavily on proving pre-existing criminal intent and on the operational methodology.
Okay.
Authorities did not solicit crowns on AN0M. They didn't suggest drug routes or targets for violence. They simply provided a communication service that criminals who are already active on other platforms or known to be engaged in organized crime chose to use.
So the crimes were initiated entirely by the users.
The messages detailing the drug movements, the extortion plots, all of it was initiated by the users, which proves their predisposition.
So if the FBI had, say, offered an AN0M user $10,000 to move a specific package of drugs, that would likely be entrapment.
That's a good way to think about it.
But just providing the platform where the user independently plans that same move is a lawful sting.
That's a good simplified distinction. And furthermore, to legally protect the operation, law enforcement has to obtain meticulous warrants, often incredibly complex, international warrants, documenting the intent and the scope. The ongoing core challenges to AN0M evidence around the globe show just how intensely defense attorneys are scrutinizing this specific legal distinction.
Which leads to the second major concern, especially related to the scale of this: privacy and collateral capture. When you monitor millions of messages or you plant hidden cameras that run for weeks, you are inevitably capturing more than just the targeted criminal conversation.
That is the unavoidable moral and legal complexity of any mass surveillance. In any large-scale interception, you risk what's known as collateral capture.
Meaning?
It means inadvertently recording the private, non-criminal communications of thousands of users. Even users who might have used the device innocently, or capturing privileged communications, like those between a lawyer and a client who might have been using the AN0M network.
That sounds like a disaster for civil liberties. How do legal systems even attempt to remedy that kind of breach?
The remedy requires intense, legally mandated procedural safeguards and judicial review. Authorities have to meticulously filter and redact the device data, removing anything that's irrelevant to the criminal investigation. They have to ensure they don't exploit or utilize communications that violate privacy laws or fall under legal privilege.
So even if the AN0M evidence is accepted in court, the defense can still argue for the suppression of specific messages if they were collected illegally or constitute an unwarranted invasion of privacy.
Exactly. This is the necessary friction in the system. The evidence is only admissible if the police can prove they respected the privacy rights of the individuals involved, even when they're gathering information on a global scale. And this is why in some jurisdictions, evidence collected via AN0M has faced much higher hurdles, depending on local interpretations of warrant requirements and privacy rights versus the methods used for mass collection.
And finally, let's circle back to the cornerstone of this entire process, the integrity of the evidence. We discussed the chain of custody, but why does the technological nature of this silent alarm evidence make integrity so much harder to guarantee than traditional evidence?
Because of the ease of manipulation. Digital evidence can be manufactured, altered, or deleted with frightening speed and near-perfect obfuscation. You can't do that with a physical piece of evidence in the same way.
Right.
Therefore, the chain of custody is exponentially more important. If that cryptographic hash is broken, if the forensic imaging process is flawed, or if the documentation showing who accessed the data is incomplete, the prosecution just collapses.
So the message to investigators is loud and clear. You can build the most advanced technological trap in human history, this global digital city of crime. But if the basic legal paper trail and the forensic integrity fail, the criminal walks free.
The sophistication of the tech absolutely has to be matched by the procedural humility of the investigator. The silent alarm is only as powerful as the due process that supports it.
That brings us to the end of this deep dive. We started by seeking that narrative spine, that instant moment when a hidden device exposes an entire criminal network.
And we've really explored the technological landscape, from the vast, global, long-term infiltration of Operation Trojan Shield, which captured the command and control of organized crime,
to the sharp, localized power of an AirTag and a hidden camera sealing a drug case at Fort Botany, and the immediate accountability provided by a camera documenting high-level corruption.
It's a huge range.
The key takeaway for you, our inframed listener, is this. The truly crucial element in modern covert investigations isn't the cost or the complexity of the device itself. It's not the proprietary AN0M app. It's not the high-res camera.
It's the meticulous legal and procedural steps, especially that chain of custody and the warrant requirements. Those are what's necessary to transform that silent covert data into loud, actionable, and legally defensible evidence.
The law remains the ultimate bottleneck for even the most powerful technology.
And that leads us to a final, provocative thought for you to reflect on. Building on this theme of pervasive technological exposure. Go on. If single devices repurpose consumer gadgets, a stripped-down phone app, or a tiny camera can topple entire international criminal organizations that have been protected for years, we have to ask ourselves a question.
And that is?
In a world that is just saturated by interconnected sensors, cameras, and communication logs, how many institutional, financial, or personal secrets are still waiting to be accidentally or deliberately exposed by the very digital systems we rely on every single hour of every single day?
It certainly makes you think differently about the phrase untraceable communication.
It does.
For those of you interested in exploring the details of the Trojan Shield and Zero-M operation further, we really recommend the official press releases from the FBI, the U.S. Department of Justice, and Europol, as well as the detailed investigative reporting done by outlets like Daily Maverick on that specific bribery case.
Until next time, stay critical and stay informed.